Hello? Is anyone there? And more importantly, can you hear me? Yeah, let's see. This is new to me. I've never done this before, a live sending, so please bear with me. I was going to see if there were any questions. Here we are. There are some questions here, yes, but I'm gonna have to read them like this. Yeah, I'm gonna watch. But they tell me to wait. All right. There are a couple of people on. Welcome. I am expecting some questions from my publisher to answer. So, yeah. All right. I'm seeing people are following. So, hello, hello. I'm still told to wait a bit. So, this is my study. This is where it's all happening. My books. Yeah, hello. Vad säger? Good morning. Is it morning over there? Yeah, right. It's evening here. It's 8 o'clock in Norway. And this is the blue hour outside, as you can see. Hey, how are you? I'm fine. I'm very nervous. I've never done a live sending before, so I'm still shaking. But here we go. I wish I could see these. Let's see. I was hoping to see. There we go. And now I can see the comments here. Great. All right. I'm sorry about the delay. I'm sorry about the start too. Okay. Nice to see you. Well, nice to. Well, I can't see you, but thank you. Nice to hear that too. There, I got it. Finally. I was hoping to see. Am I sideways? Is that the problem here? I'm gonna have to turn my camera around. How's that gonna work? The technicalities of this is not my biggest side. Shit. There we go. Hello. Yeah, I'm still waiting for more people to come. So again, this is my study. This is where I write all my books and do all my research. Is that better? Good. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't realize I was sideways. Well, it's just me. Can you hear me properly? Can someone tell me if you hear me properly? Right side up now. Good. Thank you. Can you still hear me? Yes, good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Audio is good. Audio is good. So the plan is that my publisher is going to ask me a few questions. I'm still waiting for those questions, or I'm gonna just look at the questions that he sent to me and I can start replying to that. But I'm still probably gonna have to wait for more people to join in. Well, it hasn't been that far. Okay, so what I'm gonna do meanwhile, I don't know. Hi Maria, what studies have you done which you based the book on? Right, good. A question. What studies I have done? Well, I studied Old Norse philology at the University of Oslo. I also studied history, philosophy, and the history of religions. Old Norse philology has been the most important when it comes to deciphering the meaning of names that has been so vital to my work. Right. I'm gonna have a look at the questions that my publisher actually sent. Ska vi se, where are they? Oh, sorry about the lack of professionality here. I'm still a bit shaky, and this is not something I've been doing for a, well, I've actually never done this live. So let's see. Yeah, when did I start working on the book The Seed of Yggdrasil? When? Let's see. I have to go back to 1996 actually. I was 21 years old, and 1996 is also 21 years ago, so it's yeah, interesting. So I'm 42 now, and I've been doing this for 21 years. In 1996, I went to study in England, and before I continue doing that, I just want to say something, because people are going to think that I must come from some extremely privileged family or something in order to be able to study as much as I have done. But my family was not particularly privileged at all. I did not come from a very privileged class or anything like that, but I come from a very privileged country, Norway. And well, basically, we are offered free education. You can study for as much as you want on the universities in Norway, because, well, it's free. You also get a lot of grants, and the government also, well, at least back when in 1996 when I did it, the government also paid for foreign education. So I got a huge grant to pay for my tuition fees, and I began studying at Staffordshire University in Stoke-on-Trent, actually. So I came to England, and yeah, I remember well, I remember I had been reading English and studying English a lot. My mom was an English teacher too, and I read English and even wrote in English from a quite early age. Where was I? So she made me read in English, and I had very good grades in English, and I came to Manchester Airport, and I didn't understand a word people were saying. It was very difficult dialect, and it was nothing like I had been taught in school, but I caught up quite well after a few weeks of total confusion. And I lived there in a student hall the first year in Stoke-on-Trent, and I got to know a lot of people from many different parts of the world. So naturally, we all came from outside. We were all foreigners in England, and that made us sort of join up, and we somehow started to talk a lot about our own cultures and where we came from, and people were making their national foods, and I remember I was a bit, well, I'm from Norway. It's a very small country, and I think it just being outside of Norway actually did spur my interest in Norwegian history, not only Norwegian history but Scandinavian history. And one day, I walked into a bookstore, and well, this book stood out to me. It's this one actually, this very one started everything for me. It's the Poetic Edda, translated by Caroline Larrington. And well, to make a long story short, I bought it finally, and I started reading, and it started to occur to me that it was there were things that were missing from the translation, and that's not because it was a bad translation or anything. It's a very good translation. It was just that it didn't usually translate the names. I had this feeling that something was lost in translation because the failure to actually translate the names. So I read it and read it and read it over and over and over, and eventually, when I returned to Norway the next summer, that was in 1997, I got myself 2 Norwegian copies of the Poetic Edda. This is Edda. This is translated into a very old-fashioned, well, we have 2 written languages in Norway, and yeah, one is called New Norwegian, but that's actually the most old-fashioned type of Norwegian, and the other is called bokmål, book speech, which is basically Danish, and this is the one. So I started to read them, and I discovered that they were all very, very different. Each one of these translations of exactly the same text differed from each other considerably, which spurred me on to actually want to learn the original language. So I began, let me put the Poetic Edda translations away. I began by going to the library, and well, this is my first notebook. It's got a lot of words in it with translations and possible interpretations and possible things. And with this, I started on the path that I eventually have been following since then until now, and probably for life. I would say that this was the first, and maybe, well, this was the first stage of my studies, the first stage of the seed of Yggdrasil. Then the second stage would have begun back in 1997 when I started to draw a cartoon. I'll just show you. It was fortunately never published. I say fortunately because now that I'm older and looking back at it, I can see that it wasn't that well done actually, but it did make me contemplate the myths a lot. This is like the beginning with rock carvings, and then with some history about Scandinavia very quickly. Can you see? Yeah. And then we go on to the myths, and I had these few years I had a very artistic and dreamy approach to the myths still, even though I was doing academic studies of the names and stuff. I grew up in a very academic family, so I knew how to do research already. I'd already studied at the University of Oslo for 1.5 years before I went to England. I had a lot of dreams, and I think that actually this dream approach to the myths was actually quite important to begin with, because mythology is written in mythology are stories that they have a likeness to dreams in many ways, I think. So I went on studying art in London. I went to Camberwell College of Arts, London Institute, lived there for 3 years. I was doing this cartoon while I did that. And at some point I started to realize that maybe this cartoon project was too big and too time consuming, and maybe it wasn't, maybe I even then started to realize that it wasn't good enough in a way. It was more like a way of studying the myths by drawing them, because when you draw, you spend a lot of time on each and every aspect of the myths. So I started to write instead. So the first sort of the first work I did, I called it the Shaman's Edda, because at that point I had seen the underlying current of shamanism in the Edda, and I wanted to explore that. So I lost the first book, but this is the second part. It's the Norse Cosmos, and in this, a lot of the things that I have, I've been writing later was started here. This was not published either, and of that I'm glad too, because I needed a lot of years to start to actually come to a place where I started to actually feel that I had authority in this subject. I'm gonna put these pieces away. Okay. So the first stage was actually reading the myths in translation and then starting to translate the names. And then the second stage, I did this cartoon project. And the third stage, I wrote a book that was never published, fortunately. Hello. Hello, hello. Yeah, 1996, 21 years ago, it's all started. Then some years passed and I returned to Norway after my studies in England. And I also returned to university because at that point I had started to realize that maybe, well, ambition has never been my strongest side, actually. I was more about experience, just living and learning. And so, which is probably why I'm, well, never mind. In any way, I returned to study at the University of Oslo because I realized that I needed to have some real knowledge about the Norse language, not the least. So I wanted to study Old Norse philology, which is the study of the ancient language and meaning of the Norse language. More people are logging in. That's nice. Hello to everybody. I've just been starting to talk about when I started to work with the Seidr and I concluded that I started already back in 1996 with reading the Poetic Edda for the first time for real. I had known about the Edda poems. Of course, I grew up with them, but I studied them in a new way. The thing about trying to study Old Norse philology was that I had to go through several courses in order to be able to come to that point where I could actually partake in the Old Norse philology classes. So I started to study the history of religion, and that meant I studied all the 5 so-called great religions of the world today. And then I had to specialize in one religion, and it was impossible to specialize in our own culture's previous religion. I had to study one of the great 5. So I chose the one that I thought was most similar to Old Norse paganism, and that was Hinduism, because they are clearly related and they still worship a lot of different gods, and there is a lot of magic and also some very ancient cultural connections too, which are very interesting. So that's taught me a lot. And then I could start to study Old Norse philology. After I studied that, that was sort of the 4th stage, I would say. And then comes the 5th stage, where I actually wrote my master thesis, The Maiden with the Mead. And this was actually published later by VDM Kvilhaug. The thing is about this book is that they put a very high price on it. They actually contacted me and asked to publish my thesis, and I said, of course, yes. Well, it is very expensive. So what I've done instead is to offer you on my Facebook page and on my websites, I actually put out links to the University of Oslo library, where you can actually read it for free as a PDF. So please do that. You don't buy it. I don't earn anything on it anyway. So that was the 5th stage. I wrote that book about ritual and initiation, the myths, how the myths convey a ritual structure that is akin to an initiation typical, maybe shamanistic, maybe mystery religion, very typical structure of initiation that is known in all parts of the world from very, very ancient times. So when I had finished my master thesis, I did that back in 2004. I moved to, well, I've been living around the world actually while studying because back then the Norwegian system of university was a lot more free than it is today. You could actually do it, you know, without actually partaking in any classes or anything, as long as you came back for the examinations. So I did that. So I got around while I studied all this. And then I had a friend who lived in Portugal, and I moved there for a while, and I wrote this one in Norwegian. It's called Møya med mjøden, and actually that means the maiden with the mead. So it's the same, but it's I explored what I had been doing for my master thesis, and I thought I would try to have it published in Norway, in Norwegian. I was very satisfied with this work. I actually think it's quite good still. It's one of the few works I wish I had published from the past. But it didn't happen because I got the manuscript returned to me unread, saying that they didn't think that this sort of theme would be, well, that anyone will be interested, which I thought was odd. So I started to think that I had lived in England for 4 years, and I'd lived abroad, other places, and I'd always noticed that especially people who speak English, not necessarily British people, but everybody from the English-speaking world, that there was a great interest, actually. I was always asked about Norse mythology all the time, and I thought maybe I should just try to write in English. So I started to work on another project, which I by then called the Odin Mysteries. I suppose that would be the 7th stage. And I did that, I worked on that between 2006 and 2008. While I also started to explore the new world of internet, how to make websites and stuff, and I discovered YouTube. And then we came over to the 8th stage. That was when I started my YouTube channel, because I had so much that I wanted to, I had done so much research by then that I really, really wanted to share. And I thought, well, if nobody's going to publish me, then maybe I'll just publish myself in some way. And I started doing my YouTube videos, which was, well, I was amazed by all the response. So thank you to everybody who actually responded and liked and supported and gave great feedback. It was amazing. So in 2011, and this is, I think, the last and 9th stage of the development, White Tracks, my publisher, contacted me and asked if I wanted to publish a book with them based on my YouTube lectures. So I did, and well, eventually back in 2013, this came out, and this is the book we're sort of talking about today. This is The Seed of Yggdrasil. It took a while, 18 years or something, to become what it is today, but I think it's very well researched, and I'm actually quite proud of it. This is the first version, the first edition that I got, and this is the second edition that I got. It's smaller, and you can't read it if you don't have a good eyesight or very good glasses. And eventually I finally got the Heritage edition, which is quite new. It's all the same book, but this one has a very nice cover. So that's the story of how the Seed of Yggdrasil came to be. Portugal, where I lived very close to a small place called Arganil. You know Arganil? It's very close to Coimbra. When is the Seed of Yggdrasil available for sale again? I think it's already available. I believe so. If you have questions about you know, the distribution and the sale, you should really ask the publisher, because I don't deal with that actually. But I believe the Heritage edition is available. And there is also now an ebook available. So yeah. Now I'm gonna have a look at some of the questions here, because there were some questions while I was talking. Yeah, here we go. The representative of my publisher here is asking, how did growing up in Norway influence your interest in Norse mythology? Did you have stories told to you growing up? Yeah, I did, actually, a lot. I had a very storytelling family. All my grandparents told me a lot of stories. My parents told me a lot of stories. I had a lot of contact with my extended family. So I heard stories everywhere, and I was also, of course, told about Norse myths a lot. I can start to begin by saying that I was born in 1975, and I grew up in Oslo, which is our capital. And of course, Norway by then was well on its way to become a modern society like everywhere else. Most people, as I grew up, most people were not particularly interested in the past, but maybe more interested in material goods and economic growth and modern stuff, American music, American movies. By the way, I have absolutely nothing against American movies or American music. I listen to that a lot myself, but we were very influenced by a foreign culture, actually, the American culture, a lot. I think the tie to America has been very strong in Norway, especially because so many Norwegians back in the days actually migrated there. And yeah, my grandparents had cousins who migrated, so they went to visit them. I mean, we all had a lot of contact with that, and yeah, American culture was extremely popular. So maybe that's why English is almost like a second language in Norway. We all speak English quite well. About the Norwegian culture that we came from, I think there was a certain trend of embarrassment, actually. Embarrassment about being, coming from a peasant, quite, poor and primitive culture that, we had suddenly gone rich. So I think people are more, more busy celebrating that than actually looking back to a time where, when we were, and the Vikings were not actually. I mean, the stereotype of Vikings as raping and pillaging other people is not something you want to go around being proud of, really. I think, and people didn't know that much more about it. They didn't really know how much more complex that society actually was, how much more there was to it. However, I think that what I did notice was this great love for nature that is actually somehow dwindling today. But when I grew up, it was still there. Everybody went to the forest to walk on Sundays. It's just like, even the Christians, they preferred often walking in this forest than going to church, because they said it was God's free nature. So he had a lot of love for nature. And my grandfather in particular, my father's father, Einar, he took me for a lot of walks, showed me, how to read animal tracks and herbs and every kind of forest stuff. And he also told me lots of stories from the old times, and he could recite from the sagas. He could retell saga events to me in a very funny way. He could recite Edda poetry, skaldic poetry. I remember once he brought me to this ancient burial mound, and he told me that there was probably a Bronze Age queen there, and that she might be my great grandmother. And that made me connect in a way. That made me feel that this was a part of me and my family. So yeah, but in school, mythology was taught. We were taught about mythology, but it was told in a very condescending manner, condescending towards the myths and the people who had made them. They saw it as children's tales, really. Yeah, I think I was actually quite affected by growing up in Norway, especially because of my family in particular, which was very conscious about history and local history. My grandfather, Einar, he grew up in Vestfold, where the Oseberg ship had been excavated, not a long time before he was born, actually. And yeah, he knew a lot. He had all his life from childhood, he had been around these excavations and these mounds and been thinking about them and playing around them and imagining things about them, and he conveyed that to me a lot. So maybe thanks to my grandparents and especially to my father's father, I was actually introduced to mythology and ancient culture a lot, maybe a lot more than most people actually. My grandmother, my mother's mother, she was also very important in conveying old traditions, old songs. And she had grown up on a farm. You know, she had been herding cows from when she was 5 years old. Oh, here's someone's answer a question that I got before, and that's the Seed of Yggdrasil Heritage Edition is available tomorrow, the 21st of August. Okay, that's the answer then. Great. Yeah. One more thing about growing up in Norway and having this great extended family with an interest for history was that when I was 15, well, my family was not Christian, so I didn't get this confirmation that all the other kids did. I didn't want it either. But I had a 15th year birthday, so instead of having a confirmation and receiving a Bible, I had a 15th year birthday, and my grandfather, my father's father, he gave me this. You can see it's been very well read. It's Snorre. It says Snorre's King's Sagas. It was published in 1944, and it was my grandfather's, and he gave it to me for my 15th birthday. So, yeah. Let's see if there are any more questions. Let's see. I know Coimbra have the oldest university in Portugal and maybe in Europe. Yeah, I know. It's a great town. I used to speak Portuguese back then, but I don't remember anything actually. I haven't practiced, so sorry. Here we go. A question. What kind of events or gatherings or rituals still happen in Norway today? Yeah, still would be a overstatement maybe, because we have 1,000 years of Christianity between us and the Viking Age, so any direct continuation of rituals and gathering we do not have. There are elements of old culture, but not any direct continuation. But there are, like in many other countries, there are well, there is a considerable number of people who partake in reenactment groups, and there are a lot of craftsmen, actually, good craftsmen and women, I suppose. I only know a few men. But they are actually learning how to do Viking Age crafts, how to make things in the Viking Age way, and even making the ships. So they have built a replica of the Oseberg ship. I've been to see it. It's great. And yeah, let's see. But yeah, but you can't really say there is any direct continuation, except in maybe some of the Yule celebrations we have. Like, it's not that far ago I heard, it's not so many years ago since I heard about someone who put out porridge. Actually, my brother still puts out porridge to the Nisse, the Yule Nisse, that's the Yule gnome. He likes to have porridge. We used to sing about how he wanted porridge, but very, very few people still put porridge out to the Yule gnome now. We had Julebok, which is also a very ancient ritual. Well, I don't think it's the same, but it's a sort of continuation, I suppose. Actually, a few days ago, I was in this. My cousin was 40 years old, And I went there and I noticed something that was not new to me at all, but that I sort of thought about that on that party. It was that we were all sitting by the tables, man, woman, man, woman, man, woman. So that I was surrounded by, I had one guide here and one guide there, and he would be surrounded by one woman on each side. And this seating is very traditional, and it's actually described in Old Norse books that this tradition of placing man, woman, is something they did back in the Viking Age. Also, the people who were a very closest family to the jubilant, to the girl who was 40 years old. Someone is calling on this phone. I'm just going to turn it off. Yeah, where was I? I have to have a drink. Just a moment. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, the seating. I think this tradition of putting man, woman next to each other in a pig banquet is quite common other places too. I don't know where it originated, but I know that it was practiced by Norsemen during the Viking Age. And also they had this sort of hierarchical seating, and this was also something that was present at this party. Like the people who were either oldest, I mean, I'm not oldest in acquaintance, but oldest in age, they and the people who were closest in family to the girl who had a birthday, they were all seated closest to her, while the younger people who were not blood relatives were seated further away. This also is a pattern that is actually very old. Also, during we were seated there for like 5 hours, and why? It didn't take 5 hours to eat, but it took 5 hours to for everybody who wanted to step up and sing and recite poetry and make made up songs, and basically entertaining everybody else. And this is also a very, very old custom. So I think certain cultural traits have certainly survived unconsciously. And there is the drinking. That's you get enough to drink in a Norwegian party. Now we go. Are you planning to release a second part or one new about other Scandinavian mythology? I've heard of Julenisse. I hadn't heard of putting porridge for them. Well, it's very important to put porridge out for the Nisse in the barn, if you have one. My brother doesn't have a barn, but he usually has a particular tree that he goes to, and he puts porridge there. And it's not because he's like a very practicing pagan or anything. It's just something we do sometimes, some of us. Anyway, if I'm planning to release a second part, I have been working on various things, but I think I always sort of think that the Seidr Yggdrasil is a very complete work, actually. I have actually published something that goes very well with the Seidr Yggdrasil, although it can also be read separately, and it's this. It says, the Poetic Edda, 6 cosmology poems. If you have read the Seidr Yggdrasil, you will notice that I keep presenting pieces of poetry, like a verse here and a verse there, and I discuss them a lot. But this book actually got the poems, as a whole, both in English translation, my translation, with commentaries, and with the Old Norse text next to it. So here you have the most important cosmological poems of the Edda, and I'm planning to do more of this. So you can either get this as a companion to the Seidr Yggdrasil. I think that would be very useful, or you can read it on its own if you haven't read the Seidr Yggdrasil. It's yeah, but otherwise I was, instead of continuing doing academic work, I got this huge amount of inspiration at some point. I actually, just after the Seidr Yggdrasil was released, I got really sick. It was strange. I had to have a surgery, and I had to spend a lot of time inside, and I had to quit my job because I have usually, even if I've studied a lot, and I've always had a job next to it because you have to pay your bills and things. But I was sort of forced to stay at home for a while, a good while, and then something opened up in me, and for the first time in my life, I tried to write a fiction, and I did. So I have written fiction books. So this is the first. It's about the women who were buried at Oseberg back in 834 AD in Vestfold. Oseberg is the great mound that was excavated in, it was excavated in 1905, which was exactly the same year that Norway got its independence back after many, well, 500 years of being sort of vassals, first to the Danes. Damn Danes. No, I love Danes. But, and then we were sort of in a sort of union with Sweden, but Sweden was a much more powerful nation than Norway. So 1905 was a big boost, and it sort of came with this amazing burial mound that was like the equivalent of Tutankhamun in Norway, and two tiny old women had been buried there, and I thought I want to tell their history because I've grown up with that with Oseberg. I thought about this. My grandfather told me about it when I was a child, and I've always been wondering who they were. So I've been exploring that. The first book is there, and it has a sequel, which is this, My Enemy's Head. That's a naughty title, but it's the Viking Age after all. They did things with heads, like yeah, they actually did. And there have been sometimes people I would like to. No, I wouldn't actually, not really, not in real life, but you can fantasize sometimes about heads, enemies' heads. Anyway, the third book is this, The Helrun's Claim. And the last and fourth book, but it's not actually the last, I'm still working on it, on more. But this is A Twisted Mirror, and that's the fourth. So they are all available for sale. So that's what I've been doing actually, and I think that writing fiction has been a wonderful way to free myself a bit from the academic, because I wanted to, when I wrote the Seed of Yggdrasil, I wanted it to be a serious work, not just a speculative work by someone who has a lot of thoughts about Norse mythology, but a well-researched, a well-presented piece of academic work that was still available to lots of people who are not academics. I think I did a good job out of that, but to be able to write freely and to maybe, well, I've done so much research that I know a lot about this time, and it was very easy to try to recreate it, and I could be more free. I could, well, wherever we have these gaps that we don't know exactly what happened, I could sort of fill in with my own imagination, and that's fun too. So here we go. From your work, I have learned that Hönir represented the mind in the Esir-Vanir hostage crisis. In the Seed of Yggdrasil, you associate Hönir with Ve. I was wondering why not Vili. All right. I think that I made, well, Hönir. Hönir is, his name is very interesting. It's actually a name that means chicken in plural. And I've always been thinking that since Hönir is the one who gave, he's the giver of thought and mind to humankind. We all got, according to Norse myths, we all got our mind from Hönir, from chicken. It's a very funny name. And it's actually I'm quite sure it's a very humorous name. If you think about thoughts, and you think about clocking, or chicken, picking up, It's like the mind in a way. It clucks a lot and it picks up pieces of information all the time. So it's a good metaphor actually. And if we look at the name Ve, the reason I make this comparison is because I don't say that they are the same. I don't actually say that Hönir and Ve are the same person. I'm saying that they represent something, because throughout the myths there are all the myths follow a pattern and a formula that is repeated over and over and over again, and actually different mythical characters take these roles. So it's not them as persons, but these mythical persons that actually enter these mythical persons who enter a formula in myth where they represent a trinity. So you have this trinity that keeps repeating itself, and it's a trinity that begins with Odin, Vili, and Ve. Odin, now I have explained a lot why I translate his name as the spirit. Of course, it could be translated in many more ways, but they all add up in a way. So I think the spirit is a good interpretation that sort of covers it. Whereas his brothers, they are called Vili, which means will. Now, is will connected to thought, or is will connected to emotion? I think that will is more of an emotional thing. It's something you feel in your guts, basically. It's the gut, is the will is what drives you. It's the desire, it's the intent that you have, but it's not thought. While Ve means a sanctuary, but it can also mean awe, like awesome. It's this part of consciousness that goes like, wow, the world. And that's the part I think that belongs to the mind. So that is why I actually associate, when I make this trinity, I say spirit, mind, and will, or intent, passion, maybe is a better, spirit, mind, and passion. These are the three. This is a trinity formula that keeps repeating itself in the male figures, male characters of the myths. So they can all somehow represent one of these three aspects of the human consciousness, perhaps. Let's see. Archetypical roles, yeah. Let's see, are there any more? It's okay, it's a difficult language. Yeah, thank you. Portuguese is very difficult. You know how I actually managed to learn Portuguese? I had learned Spanish, so I knew Spanish very well. Actually, I've been speaking Spanish a lot because I spent a lot of time in Mexico. And when I came to Portugal, what I did was to replace words. Like if you have a word like estación, station, in Spanish, all I did was to just change the ion into ow, and somehow people understood me, and eventually I started to learn it a bit, but I didn't spend enough time there to actually learn it well. Let's see, just in time for the eclipse. Is there an eclipse now? Shit, that's nice. Anyway, any more questions I haven't picked up? Right. Someone has to ask me more questions, actually. Yeah. I'm waiting. I'm taking a glass of water. Let's see. Right. Well, should I just talk about something, or is someone gonna ask me a question? Anything. That's a heart. Thank you. There we go. Can you talk about some of the similarities between Norse and Finno-Ugric mythologies? Yeah, that's very nice. Finno-Ugric. I can't pretend to be an expert on Finno-Ugric mythologies. I've just read, I read a bit. But I had this, I think I actually wrote about that in the Seidr Eagle, so let me have a look. Because there's something about the sun and the land of the sun in Finno-Ugric mythologies that is actually quite similar to how the world of the Norse is pictured. And I think I wrote something really nice about that sometime. So many years ago since I wrote about it, so please bear with me. Should be in the fate section. I don't remember exactly where I wrote about it. In any case, but I read this study about something they called Proto-Uralic mythology. By Proto-Uralic, it's a way of reconstructing original mythology from folklore and old texts. So someone, I think his last name was Napolskik or something, Napolskik, yeah. He wrote a really interesting article that was very helpful. He wrote this article about what was similar, because if you look at, he was looking through all these Finno-Ugric myths, all of them, I mean from the Sami, from the Finnish, and all these diverse Siberian tribes who were Uralic, Finno-Ugric, and he saw that there was something that happened in all of them, because they're all different, they all belong to cultures that have been separated from each other for a long time, ages and ages and ages. So when they all share some traits in common, we can reasonably assume that these traits are very old. So that's why it's called Proto-Uralic, like Proto-Indo-European. We have so, like for example, if you go to look at all these Indo-European mythologies, you find some similarities that are repeated in all of them. That's when we can think that this is very ancient. Like Thor mythology has a lot in common with Indra mythology from the Vedas, and the connection between Norse mythology and the Indian Vedas is very old. It goes back at least 5,000 years. So, and it's also repeated. The symbols, the hammer symbol, a lot of Thor symbolism, thunder god symbolism is repeated in many Indo-European mythologies, which means that it is extremely ancient. And in the Proto-Uralic study, what stood out as common for all of them, and thus very ancient and widespread, and it was the idea that there is a land to the south of the world. bathed in this light, you would be renewed and reborn. So this is, and it's also situated in the south. So, and it's not in the Norse mythology as contrary to the Proto-Uralic mythology. That's the only actual real difference here, is that we don't hear of the sun living there. In this, we don't find any text saying that she lived there, but we do find a lot of comments about this sun goddess coming from the south, just like this sun woman in the Proto-Uralic mythology. So there have definitely been, must have been some mutual sharing here that probably goes very far back in time. I'm sure there are a lot more similarities to Finno-Ugric myths and Norse myths, but obviously there are similarities between almost all the mythologies of the world. And for example, just the world tree, that's universal. You find it everywhere. You find it even in the Americas and in Mexico. I read a lot about that. This world tree, and you had this in all these Siberian shamanic societies where the world tree was actively used in shamanic journeys. And you even find the world tree down in Africa. You find it everywhere. It's the more you find similarities between many mythologies from different parts of the world, the more ancient it probably is, actually. So, yeah. Let me see. Do some people still believe in Norse myths in Norway? Well, if we're not, I don't know if you should count. Do some people still believe in Norse myths? I don't know if you can count these neo-pagan groups, because they do, of course. But when you use the word "still," I think of a direct continuation. I don't think there's a direct continuation, but there's certainly a movement for reconstruction, which is particularly influenced by people who like to recreate the old crafts, for example, and who also maybe like to dress up and yeah. But if people in general in Norway are very modern. They are on their iPhones and smartphones, and it's actually quite shocking how few of them who know anything about Norse myths. Most people I meet, they're like, "Oh, Norse myths, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, Thor with a hammer." That's about what they know. And this year, actually, I went to this play, a theater. It was called Edda. So I was expecting, like, wow, this is going to be nice. Finally, they're making a theater play about the Edda that lots of people are going to see. And it was horrible, I have to say. They presented all these gods as sort of pantomime idiots who were suddenly, Odin was like hanging from a tree with a electric guitar, and that he hung with the electric guitar, the image in itself, that was actually quite funny, but he was just and then the Völva, the one who speaks the prophecy of the world, she came in like that was about all they said, and it was completely meaningless. It had absolutely no depth at all, and people were I suppose a lot of people who go to theaters they want to be a part of a sort of cultural well, I don't know, it seems pretentious anyway, but they liked it and I hated it. No, people don't know much about Norse myths in this country except those of us who are particularly interested and devoted. Hello, 2 people are watching, 3. I'm sorry, it just stopped. So it was, yeah, I didn't know it would stop suddenly. Maybe there is a 1 hour limit or something. Hello. Let's wait for more people, maybe. Maybe you can take yourself may take a small break. So I will start talking. Well, I'm already talking, but yeah, I don't know what happened. We just stopped. I didn't touch anything. Hello, Sagnarari. Wow, what a nice name, you know, Sagnarari. That's what they called Loki in this poem called Hausløng, which means the very long autumn. Hello. And Sagnarari means the one who stirs the stories, because Sagn is a story. So he stirs the stories. He's the big conflict maker, isn't he? We need, if you're gonna make a good story, we need someone who make a catalyst for conflict. That's Loki. He is, I think Loki is a great character. There is absolutely no evidence that Loki was ever worshipped as a god, but he was a very important character in the myths. And when I look at Norwegian folklore, we also have these sort of characters who keep popping up all the time, who actually, well, like we have this character called Espen Askeladd. He partake. I have no count of how many princesses he has won through his clever maneuvers to get princesses and half the kingdom as well. There are lots of stories about him, and I think Loki is the same sort of character, not a god that people worshipped, but a character used for making conflict in the stories. He represents those parts of those qualities of the human condition that often creates conflict. So it's a very important role. He's neither good nor bad. He's just is, like, sort of deeply human. Yeah. Okay, the publishers want to make money. That is normal, but it's the wrong way to spread your hard work. So you think I should have done all this hard work for free? I have done a lot of work for free. I made more than 30 video lectures for free. I have lots of articles on my website for free. I don't make much money on the Seidr Yggdrasil, but well, it helps, but it's not, well, I still have to work. So I don't know exactly why it's so pricey. It's not a print on demand run. It's yeah, I don't know. You have to ask the publisher about that. Yeah, again. Anyway, thank you. He moves the wheel. Yeah, yeah. Stirs the stories. Any more questions? Well, I need some questions. Let's see. Plus, you have explained that it was publisher who set the price, not you. Yeah, that's true. I really don't know exactly why it's priced like that or anything. I have absolutely nothing to do with pricing or distribution. Yeah. Okay, I see this comment here. People get judgmental if you love Loki. Yeah, I don't know. I love Loki too. I mean, I don't love everything he does, but he is. You wouldn't get all these stories if you didn't have Loki. You would have all peace and quiet, perhaps. Maybe the world would be a better place without the Lokis of the world. But at the same time, he represents so much. He represents even. He's the great inventor too. You know, it's like maybe he is a great symbol of the human spirit, which is very creative, very curious, and does amazing things and brings great gifts to humanity, but who also is going to make a lot of mistakes and make a big fool out of himself often. That's typical humankind, isn't it? Fenrir is Loki's son. Yeah. That is one of the downside gifts of Fenrir. He is, as I said, the human condition. I think greed, like Fenrir, it's basically means greed. He's the father of greed in the world, and greed is what is actually, according to the Poetic Edda, this is what actually kills spirit. Greed. It kills Odin during Ragnarok. So yeah, greed, the big adversary of humankind, the big enemy actually. So and it's a result of us, the part of the human condition, to be ridden by greed. The world is ridden by greed. What is your favorite? Oh, here we go. Get some. What is your favorite Haiti for god names? Mine are Omi and Runivagna and Ökethor. I feel like they are very different personalities with a different Haiti. Yeah, each Haiti is a nickname that describes a mythical character, particularly in particular situations. Like Ökethor means sort of sliding Thor, the movement of thunder. What is my favorite Haiti? Oh, I just mentioned Sagnarærir. It means the stirrer of the one who stirs the stories. That's a nickname for Loki, and well, I think that's a great one. Well, there are so many. I can't even pick one favorite. They're all my favorites. I love all of them. I would like to hear more of your thoughts about the great northern goddess of many names and how she is linked with women's mysteries. Ooh, that's a whole book. Yeah. First of all, to define what is a great goddess. If we look at from an academic point of view, a great god or a great goddess is a god that was in a polytheistic society. A great god or a great goddess would be one of those gods that are part of the big public sponsored cult, where the state, where the king comes. It will also be a god who is worshipped by absolutely everyone. Because even if they had lots and lots of gods, some people would, well, some places, some classes, some gender, people would focus on slightly different gods everywhere. That's why we have so many god names, and we have a lot of goddess names for goddesses that we don't know anything about except for the names. Lots, I mean, thousands of names. In place name material and written material, it's a lot. But a great goddess would be one who is worshipped everywhere by everyone, regardless of gender, regardless of class, regardless of family and locality. The entire religion, the entire public religion, the one that everybody at some point in life, every year perhaps, partake in, would be this one. And it would also be a great goddess who actually covers a lot of areas where you have a lot of specialized lesser gods. The great god or great goddess will be concerned with more or less every aspect of life and death and fate and war and love, and like Freya. Also, it's very common in polytheistic societies to have a certain pantheist there might be certain pantheist trends around it. That means that it's not uncommon, at least for a lot of people, to, for example, like in India, we have you can use a good comparison would be the great goddess or the great god in India. There you have these devotional movements, and this is a culture where everybody worship a lot of different gods. You see different gods on every corner, and they have thousands, literally thousands and thousands of gods and goddesses. But a few of them stand out, and there are these movements. For example, there is a movement that thinks, there's a pantheist movement thinking that Shiva is the one great supreme being, that all the other gods and goddesses are actually just avatars of. They are sort of aspects in different areas of life of this same ultimate being. And there is also a quite powerful Shakti movement, which believes that in the great goddess. And each of these movements have sort of picked one of these great gods or goddesses and said, this is what the one who ultimately is behind all the others. I have argued extensively that I'm not saying that all Norsemen are pantheists. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that some of them were, and that they had a great influence on the Edda poetry. Freya, she fits the bill of a great goddess, just like Odin fits the bill of a great god, and it's not uncommon to have a male and female version of the same in the same religion. Just a moment. Freya fits the bill because, one, her name, Freya. This, whenever you find in all the other cultures, you find this great goddess figure among all the other gods and goddesses. This one standing out. She usually has a name that is not really a name, but a title meaning the sovereign or the supreme being or the lady. And Freya was actually a term used in everyday life among Norsemen back in the Viking Age, and it still exists in our language today when we say fru. You could also say that in German, for example, you could just say Frau for woman, and it's from Freya. And it just meant lady, a female authority, a female ruler. So Freya fits the bill because of her name, which also would mean that her brother Freyr also fits the bill of a great god, and he was a great god especially to the Swedes back in the Viking Age. His name also means just, well, Lord, the Lord and the Lady. This is the one. Another very important trait of Freya is that she covers all the aspects of life, and she was worshipped by kings, by poets, by warriors, by women, by the common people, about everyone. And in Norway today, we have a lot of names for plants and insects, especially beginning with Mari, like Maria, like my name. But it's not me. It's obviously the Virgin Mary, the Madonna. However, when the church took over all these old pagan cultures, they usually replaced pagan, very, very powerful pagan terms, pagan rituals, pagan sacred places. They all turned it into a Christian sanctuary or a Christian concept. If you've ever been to a Catholic country, you'll see amazing number of saints who, I mean, you have a woman saint, the Madonna of Hurricanes, and it's obviously this Madonna of Hurricanes is obviously worshipped at the place where there was an old goddess of hurricanes, basically. So yeah, and so all these names that used to be names for plants and insects in particular that begin with Mari in Norwegian, I read about it. It's I haven't done that research myself, but there are very good reasons to think that it used to be Freya at some point. Yeah, and also another important aspect of a great god, great goddess, is that they take lots of different names. Not only lots of different functions, but also lots of different names. And Freya did too. Freya is called this and that and this and that, and you recognize. So suddenly she shows up with a different name, but because we have Snorri, we know for a fact that there was a tradition where this was just a nickname for Freya, like Gundel, like Gefn, like Gefjon. And Snorri also says very explicitly in the prose Edda, he says Freya traveled the world, and wherever she came among people, people worshipped her by different names. He says that directly. That's written down by one of our primary sources. So there are many good reasons to actually call her a great goddess. Now, as to women's mysteries, we won't tell the men about that, will we? Now, actually, we don't know so much about women's mysteries, but we do know that Freya was connected to Seidr, the art of oracular divination and witchcraft, you could say. So I have argued in my book extensively about why Freya is identical to the first Völva who came to the world with a new name, and how she introduced the art of Seidr to humanity. And then there is another source in Heimskringla, Snorri again. He lets us know that Freya was the one who taught the art of Seidr to the gods, and Odin practiced it. He practiced it quite shamelessly, although it was Snorri claimed that it was considered unmanly for men to actually perform Seidr. I don't know why it was considered unmanly, but I'm not sure if it was considered so unmanly by the actual pagan Vikings that maybe they started to think it was unmanly later on due to Christian influence, continental influence, that something about Seidr was not considered manly, and they were quite obsessed with being manly, which yeah, I think they were perhaps back then. My impression is that men were concerned with being manly, but they were concerned with that in a way that is more healthy than maybe today. It's well, it's more difficult today and everything. Anyway, in any case, there is a description of a side ritual in the saga of Eirik the Red, where we hear that the Völva, who is the female leader of the ritual, she's treated with great respect, and when she performs her seance of Seidr, she asks all the women, both slaves and free women, everybody who were female, on the farm would stand around her in a circle and sing this song called Vardlokker, which means calling the guardians, basically, or calling the... Vard means basically guardians, but it also refers to spirits, guardian spirits, who would tell the Volva what she needed to know. So this passage and many others suggest that Seidr was a very important part of the female sphere. Although men did practice it. Yeah, I just want to say something about that, because we all know about the witch hunts that went on in Europe during medieval times and well into the 16th and even 17th centuries. Something interesting about witch hunts in Scandinavia is that women were not actually targeted as much as men in the beginning. And that's a bit unusual. because even quite late there is this, we find sources that tell us that women practicing witchcraft was not frowned upon so much. Whenever we find these sources about the Vörlur, that is the women who were professional practitioners of Seidr, they're always described quite favorably, even by these Christian men. While male sorcerers, side men, they get a lot of beating, especially from the time of it starts. It seems in this Heimskringla. It starts in the saga of Harald Hårfagre. Harald Hårfagre, he was married to this Sami woman that he loved a lot, and her son. Well, I think they had more sons, but one of her sons was called Ragnvald Rettilbeini. Now, Rettilbeini, it's not quite certain exactly what it means, but Beini means his legs, and Rettil seems to be referring to welcoming or spreading. So there was something about this Ragnvald, and he was a very powerful sideman. Now, when this wife of Harald Hårfagre died, he has had about 30 wives because he tried to be the king of whole of Norway, and nobody had tried that before because there were about 30 kingdoms or small realms. Even some of them were republics, but 30 tribal lands, ancient tribes who had ruled themselves. With their own kings, even tiny counties with their own king. So in order to actually become king of all of them, Harald Hårfagre had to marry a princess from each of these tribes. That's why he had 30 wives. And he also married this Sami woman from Finnmark. That's the northern part of Norway. So he obviously even wanted to become king of the Sami people, I think. Anyway, when she died, something happened to her corpse, which really spooked Harald Hårfagre up. He felt that she had somehow tricked him. I'm not going to tell the whole story. You can actually read it if you find the saga of Harald Hårfagre. You can read about it yourself. In any way, somehow this led to a hatred of his son Ragnvald and a hatred of sidemen in general. So he was the first king, Norwegian king, not only to try to gather the country into one country, but he was also the first to actually persecute male sorcerers. Then it didn't happen so much, but then Olaf the Holy, when he lived, he was actually called Olaf Digri. This means Olaf the Huge because he was big or fat or something like that. So he was only called Olaf the Holy after his death because he was then made into a saint. Well, he came along and he tried actively to Christianize Norway. And while he did so, he got a huge, very powerful pagan opposition against him, and particularly sidemen. If you read the saga, the Snorri saga, there are a few more sagas of Olaf the Holy, but Snorri's saga of Olaf the Holy actually tells a story about how the king, he never mentions the female, the Vörlur. It was like they were untouchable in a way. It's strange, but they were quite respected even hundreds of years after Christianity. Not, well, the women who were probably not called Vörlur anymore, but Anyway, he persecuted sidemen, and the first witch hunts in Scandinavia focused on persecuting men. So there might be the idea that they were unmanly. It's not necessarily that. We don't know. And there are many indications that men who were naturally unmanly, at least according to Viking Age standards, and I say that's what they had, really very high and difficult standards. So you didn't even have to be gay to be regarded as unmanly or anything like that. But I think that men who perhaps didn't fit in this very warlike society. They could easily move into the realm of magic, where they would be accepted as how they were, because if you were a sorcerer, then you were just different anyway. So we find a lot of graves with people who were buried with magical amulets and things, who have a sort of gender ambiguous grave, actually. So this, well, there are many reasons why these male sources may have been accused of unmanliness in medieval sources. We don't know. I think maybe they were a lot more accepted in pagan times than they were later in the memories of them. So, yeah. Okay, let's see. Yeah, the women's mysteries. Yeah, I'm sorry about the women's mysteries part. The thing is that all the source material we have was written down by men, and they wouldn't know the women's mysteries. I think these men actually did an amazing job of portraying women, female characters. They were really good at it. They respected women a lot. Even hundreds of years after Christianity, there was I think women in Scandinavia have had this, if not always legally, a strong position, so a sort of culturally strong position. But they didn't write the books, so how are we going to know their mysteries? Just have to sort of imagine, I suppose. Yeah. I'm sure I could write a lot about that. I have actually, especially in my fiction. I try to explore that theme of women's mysteries a lot more than I can possibly do based on research, because if you're going to present something in a serious academic way, you have to stick to what sources you have, and we just don't have enough sources for that. So it will be a bit of imagination and speculation and educated guesses, and I've done a lot of that in my, especially in all my books, I think, but in my fiction work, I think I am a lot more free to actually explore some of those aspects that are not possible to know for sure. Yeah. Any more questions? Let's see. What is? Oh, no. Yeah. You mentioned somewhere that Njord has 9 daughters. Where in the Edda can I find information on this? Yeah, that's easy. It's Solarljod, the Song of the Sun. It's the last verse, actually, the last stanza. Here are runes that have been carved by Njord's daughters, 9. So, and here in that setting is in the world of the dead, actually. So the 9 daughters of Njord, they live in the world of the dead, and they are carving runes. And if you read the whole poem, it's quite obvious that they are a sort of Norns, and the Norns are carving the runes of fate in, well, far down beneath the world tree. So, Solarljod stanza 79. You can look it up online, and I actually have a translation of my own, both in the Seed of Yggdrasil and in online as well on my website, freya.theladyofthelabyrinth.com. There you can find an article called Solarljod, where I have offered translation for free. So, yeah, let's see. Another question. Yes, Frigga, Freya, Vanadis is the great goddess I'm thinking about. Yeah, the goddess of the Vanir. Yeah, it's not a question here, but identification between Frigg and Freya. Obviously, in the Norse myths that we have, Frigg and Freya are presented as 2 different characters, and I think that during the Viking Age, they were also worshipped as 2 different characters. And I think that if anyone back in the Viking Age identified the 2 as one, they would belong to a certain minority of pantheist people who were, more initiated into the deeper mysteries, perhaps. But historically speaking, if we're not going to talk about them as characters, but where do they come from? If we go back to older sources, we find that both Frigg and Freya, and when we start to see also all the so-called contradictions. For example, Snorri presents Frigg as the wife of Odin, while Freya is just the wife of Od. However, Odr and Odin is the same name, because Odin, the in ending is the equivalent of English the. So it's the Odr. That is, Odin means the Odr. And what does Odr means? Well, it means, it's what I have translated into spirit, because it has so many different, you could translate it to Odr, could be translated to poetry, to frenzy, fury, anyway, a lot of things, but and spirit, and he also gives spirit, and he gives breath to humankind, which makes him, well, which makes it possible to call him the spirit. In any way, Odin is just a bestämt form, oh, how do you say that in English? Well, it's a grammatical form. Oh, I don't remember the word in English, but we say bestämt, that means the determinate form of his name, the Odr, the spirit, while Odr is just spirit without or poetry. So basically the language itself opens up for the very strong possibility that these goddesses were ultimately married to the same man, but that does not mean that they are identifiable, because in the Viking Age, polygamy was actually practiced. So Odin as a king, not everybody got to have a lot of wives, sorry guys, but kings and big, powerful men, they could have many wives, at least, well, a few. And so actually, the fact that we see that both Freya and Frigg are married to Odin does not mean that they are the same, because it could just be a reflection of a polygamous society. But we move back in other older sources. If you go to the continent, to Germany, Anglo-Saxon England, then there is this goddess called Frigga, and she's married to Wotan. And the name Freya is associated with Frigga. So it's also, there are many other similarities, but in any way, there are many good reasons to think that the two goddesses, who at some point in history separated into two different goddesses, because they were probably called different things by the different tribes, the same goddess, but with different traditions, because there were tribal societies, and each tribe had their own traditions. We don't know all these traditions. We know only the summary that came after paganism was dead or attempted murdered. We don't know all of these traditions, but that is the reason why there are so many contradictions, is because there were different traditions. And at some point in history, back somewhere in time, some people worshipped her as Freya, and others worshipped her as Frigg. They have too many things in common, basically, to not see that they emerge from the same original character of cult. But yeah. Anyway, let's see. I really love the attention you brought to pantheism in the Edda. Yeah, that was one of my greatest discoveries. It was so... I really took me a long time to figure it out, but actually the fact that I had studied Hinduism in university made it a lot easier, because I read a lot about pantheist trends in Hinduism, and I started to see how it was described, how these pantheist movements describe the god, the great god and great goddess, as they are revealing themselves with lots of different names. I am called this among those, and not only India, but you have only go to the Roman Empire where you find these mystery cults to the goddess Isis, who was originally from Egypt and Ethiopia, but then she was called something else. She was called Aset. As soon as she was imported into the Roman Empire, she was called Isis, and that's not the same as the maniacs over there. It's nothing to do with their name at all. But anyway, in this book of Isis, written by Apuleius a couple of hundred years before Christ, this goddess comes and she starts to say, I was called this when I was among them, and then I was called something else and I was among the other people, and I was called so and so and so and so and so. And she starts counting up all the names of goddesses that were known to the Romans at the time, a lot of them, and she is each and every one of them. And in the Poetic Edda, you find exactly the same manner of speaking in Grimni's Mall, where Odin is the one who says, I was called this when I lived there, and then I was called this when I lived there. I was called so and so and so and so. It was called everything. And in the end, just like Isis in this book that was written down more than 1,000 years before the Edda was written down, exactly the same. She concludes, and just as Odin also concludes, that they all come together as one in me. And I never had just one name when I moved among the people. And you also have the same reference about Freya in Snorri's Prose Edda, where he says that Freya took upon herself new names and new shapes wherever she came among different peoples. So that was my clue. And then I started to explore it, and I realized that the average Norseman of the time would probably be an average polytheist. But just like in India and just like in the Roman Empire, and in every one of those old pagan civilizations, in every one of them, they have this trend that is just for the initiated, just for the people who seek more than just most people they would believe in the gods, they would sacrifice to the gods, they would do all sorts of rituals, but they wouldn't go around thinking about the gods all the time. They would live their lives. But then you would have these few people who would be devoted, and I think that is where you start to get these deeper thoughts and these deeper philosophies, and that's where pantheism starts to emerge. So the poets, a skull would be a highly educated person who would have gone through such initiation mysteries, just like Odin did when he tried to win the art of poetry. He also goes through, so it's the same. You have these poets created the Edda poems, and they had gone through these mysteries. So that is why I think we find this powerful pantheist undercurrent in the myths. That's not always even an undercurrent, it's straight in your face once you start to recognize signs. Yeah. Let me see. Yes, written in runes. Me too. I'm not sure what that means. But something is clear in Italy anyway. How is Italy? I love Italy. My man is Italian, so we visit quite a lot. So let me see. What is Kvilhaug? Is this a pantheist deity or concept? Yeah, the sacrosanct god. Yeah, that is that is one of those concepts. Kvilhaug. That is the sacrosanct god. That's a bit. You have all these gods. They're obviously sacred. They're all holy. But Kvilhaug. But I'm not sure if you wrote this correctly, because I believe that I don't remember exactly where that is said as a singular, because I wonder if that's from, if it's from the Völuspá, that would be referring to all the gods, the sacrosanct gods, as a plural. So maybe that's not the right example, but I'm not sure. I don't remember if I've seen that as a singular, but it's likely that I've seen it, but I'm not sure. So what is this? I saw it every 5 minutes driving through crossroads in villages. Okay, Dog Saga, I'm not sure if I know what you're referring to now, because I have been talking a lot, so I'm not sure if I got all your comments here. I saw it every 5 minutes. I'm not sure what you mean. Written in the runes. I really love. We want. Anyway, are you Scandinavian? Yes, I am. I am Norwegian. Yeah. So, yes, to answer that, minor voice, I am Scandinavian. Born and bred. And there's no alcohol in this at all, actually. Let's see. Well, thank you, Dog Saga. It remains a mystery then. Yeah, it does. I love listening to you. Very illuminating. Thank you. So is my man, Lombard Dolomite, whom I love. I love mine too. It's like I always called him my Roman captive, just like a little reference to old times. I just haven't sacrificed him yet, and I won't. He's too nice. Völuspá. I'm referring to the Christian takeover of goddess shrines. Oh yes, that's what you meant, Dog Saga. Yes, all these, as you have seen in Italy, obviously it's everywhere. All these ancient pagan sites have been replaced by saints. So you have this saint of the hurricanes, you have this saint of rain. I was in Bulgaria recently, and they have this Orthodox Christianity there. And I bathed in this amazing pool. It was a forest stream. It was very cold, but well, I'm used to cold water, so all the Bulgarians were like, oh, no, no. And I went to have a swim, and this water came from this spring close to a cave. Inside the cave, there were these icons of the Madonna, and the spring was obviously sacred to the Madonna. And I am since springs and caves have always been associated with goddesses in ancient cultures, I'm pretty certain that this is one other example of Christian appropriation of old pagan sites. It's everywhere. In Norway, for example, we have a lot of place names that indicate pagan cults, and actually they have something in Scandinavia. I think we were Christianized quite late, actually, compared to other countries. It happened many centuries after it happened in other parts of Europe. So when it happened, it had become it was sort of a golden age during the 12th, 13th centuries. So all these Scandinavians, especially Icelanders, they did a great job. It's something about being outside of your, well, I'm not gonna go there. Anyway, Icelanders in particular have done an amazing job of writing down all these old sagas and legends and this poetry, and they wrote in their own language, which also means that we have access to the language they spoke, and they maintained place names. They had this very, even back then, they were very conscious about their own language, so although all these insects and plants were changed, they changed their names into being Mary's insects and plants and not Freya's, but apart from that, we have a lot of old place names indicating pagan cults, just in Oslo, there is a place called Torshov, and it's so funny because most Norwegians today, they don't even know. So I usually tell people, do you know that Torshov, that is a name that means Thor's temple? So such place names always indicate that here was a temple of Thor. So we have a lot of that. So anyway, much like how Bridget was transformed into a saint. Yeah, that again, we have the same. How's my day been? It's been great. Thank you. What's up? Well, I'm talking about Norse myths and my book and stuff. That's what's up. And hey again. Right. Have I got any new comments here? Is there anything I haven't replied to? Let me see. Roman captive. Yeah, that's my Roman captive. Let's see. Are you Scandinavian? Yes, I am. Yeah. Any more requests or questions? Shall I try to just invent something? What time is it? It's 9:45. Well, how do you feel about Victor Rydberg's Teutonic Myths? I don't think I've read this. What an interesting cave, Bulgaria. Which goddess was it originally? I don't know. I don't know. They didn't know, the people I went with, and I don't speak Bulgarian. It's a very, very strange, very different language. It's a Slavic language, and the only word I learned was Nasdrave. This means chairs. Let's see. I am still working my way through Seidr videos, but I just want to thank you for all your contributions. You have helped and taught me so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very glad to get nice feedback. Yeah. Any more questions? So, I am waiting. I'm just gonna have a sip of my absolutely non-alcoholic beer. Let me see. Jeg visste ikke at vi kunne stille spørsmål, så jeg var ikke forberedt. Håper du gjør dette igjen en annen gang. Ja, det skal jeg. I'm sorry, this was in Norwegian. I think I might do this again. It's the first time. This could be a way of teaching, and it's very funny actually to get comments while I'm talking. Let's see. I too couldn't thank you enough for your work. You're a reluctant prophetess to me. Yeah, I'm very reluctant to prophesy things. I try to be an academic and a writer. I'm just a writer, basically, a researcher. The different editions of the books are all the same regarding the text and content. Yes, it's there's a difference in size and in cover, but they're all the same content. So if you have the one, you don't need the other. Not save your money. Buy some of my books. Okay. I got a message from my publisher saying that I could finish when I want from now because, gosh, I have been on 2 hours and I start to, yeah, well, I'm not tired yet, but unless some people are asking me more questions now, I'm gonna finish very soon. So let's see. Great, let's do it again soon. You're a great academic and teacher. Thank you, White Tracks. Yeah, awesome. I do love the new covers though. Yeah, actually I do too. It's amazing, I have to say. If you are into books for more reasons than just the content, like I am. This is like, I like this book. This is the Heritage Edition. It's something else. I have to admit that I haven't actually read my own book in a long time. Partly because just after I released it, I fell sick for a good while, and then I started to work on my fiction. So I haven't really read the book myself for a long time. But when I received this just a few days ago, I somehow managed to read through it in 2 days. I read fast, so, and I wrote it myself, so it's not like I have to sit down. But I'm still quite proud of it, actually. It took a lot of work, a lot of time to make. So yeah, I'll come up with more questions for you next time. I feel too starstruck right now. Oh, are you starstruck? You don't have to be. I'm just human. Oh, thank you. Anyway, it's a compliment. So maybe I am going to finish now, but I'm gonna see if I can make this video go also be shared so that it's possible to see it later. All right, I'm gonna finish. Thank you so much for watching. Oh, there is a question. All right. I am curious about the connection between deities and different animals in Norse mythology. Do you have any thoughts about the connections, like why those animals in particular? No, I haven't really. I am completely aware that different gods. I haven't done so much on that subject, except when I wrote about Frey and Freya and the difference between them and what they represent, because Freyr tends to be associated, like all the male gods actually, it tends to be associated with the tame animals, domesticated animals, like Frey, the horse, Thor, the buck. Odin is an exception, but Odin is very special, and Odin moves into the other realms. Freya, on the other hand, is associated with falcons and cats, wild cats. And these underworld women are associated with dogs and wolves, which are also animals connected to the underworld. So, with the exception of Odin, who is a Seidr man, and we have talked about that before, that Seidr could be a realm that was somehow considered feminine, even if men also practiced sometimes. Anyway, so there is this female characters tend to be associated with wild animals, and male characters, except Odin, tend to be associated with tame animals, and that's something to do with what male and female represent in the Norse myths, and that is too much of a subject to take here. I have written about it in the Seidr of Yggdrasil, and I could do a talk about it, but not now. It's too much. So anyway, thank you everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you for very nice comments and interesting questions. I will turn this off if I can figure out how to do that. You see, oh, there it is. Okay, goodbye.